We usually think about national security, armies, borders, visible stuff.
Right. Obvious threats.
Exactly. But what if the real fight was, like, silent,
Uh,
over things we need every day, like water?
mm-hmm.
Today we're doing a deep dive into Silent Siege, the Fall of Texas. It's historical fiction, but it paints this really vivid picture of a hidden war for resources right there in Texas.
And what makes it so compelling is how it taps into real, current worries. It imagines this foreign plot, but not like an invasion.
Yeah.
It's more strategic, exploiting Texas's key needs, especially water. And the Sun Tzu quotes at the start of each chapter, that really sets the tone.
Totally. Strategy, long game stuff, all happening under the radar.
Exactly.
So the main idea in Silent Siege is this foreign power sort of encouraging water-guzzling industries to move to Texas. They're taking advantage of the state's fast growth and these right of capture water laws.
Which basically means landowners can pump as much groundwater as they want from under their land.
Right. And the book flat out says, water, the new oil, the new battlefield. Pretty stark framing.
It is, and in the middle of all this figure emerges, Bob Ackgill. And it's pronounced Ockdale, by the way.
Ockgill. Got it. He seems to be one of the first to kind of smell a rat.
Yeah, he starts connecting the dots.
So our mission today, for you listening, is to unpack these threats as the book shows them and look at Ockgill's initial response. Think of it as your shortcut through these really complex issues in Silent Siege.
Okay, so this Silent Siege, the fiction lays out this really calculated plan. Foreign actors aiming to drain Texas's aquifers
Oh.
by making it super attractive for these water-heavy industries to set up shop there. They're betting the demand will just overwhelm the supply, using the state's own rules and growth against it.
So no bombs, no soldiers,
Yeah.
just economic pressure and resource drain.
Exactly, destabilizing a key region from the inside out. It shows how, modern conflict might look different, exploiting systemic weaknesses.
And here's something really interesting the book throws in. The Cheech UPS Act. We generally see that as a good thing, right? Bringing semiconductor manufacturing back.
Yeah, for national tech security.
But the story suggests it might have accidentally made things worse. Like, the rush to build might have skipped over important environmental checks in Texas.
Checks that might have flagged how fragile the water situation already was.
Right. And it mentions big names, Samsung, TSMC, building these huge factories. And this tech billionaire character, Aloy Minsk, is involved in pushing it forward.
So a policy aimed at boosting security in one area
Technology.
might unintentionally weaken security in another. Resource security. Because maybe they didn't look at the whole picture.
It really makes you think about how interconnected everything is policy-wise.
Absolutely. That need for, integrated risk assessment. You can't just focus on one piece.
Okay, then the story adds another layer, the space tourism gambit.
Hmm.
It looks at the 2012 Space Tourism Act. The goal was making Texas a leader in spaceflight, obviously.
Sure. Big ambitions.
But the fiction suggests this might have also provided cover for, and I quote, more sinister names.
How so?
Well, it mentions SpaceX and Eloy Minsk again. Suggests giving them this launch site near South Padre Island, which is ecologically sensitive.
Right.
Could have given them sort of unchecked access to resources, including water, all under the banner of space exploration. And maybe setting up a monopoly over orbit and communications, too.
Wow. So the state's own ambition becomes a potential vulnerability.
Yeah, like the excitement about space blinded them to the risks on the ground.
And the idea of a monopoly stretching from space down to basic resources like water, that really escalates the Silent Siege concept.
Then there's the Californian exodus in the book.
Yeah.
Silicon Valley types moving to Texas.
Yeah.
Lower taxes, less regulation. Again, Eloy Minsk is often part of this wave.
Okay. We hear about that happening in reality, too.
Right. But the book adds this twist. It quotes an old saying, when the sheep move, the wolves are close behind. These tech folks bring huge demands for water, making the crisis worse.
Adding more strain.
And the weird part in the fiction, California's governor apparently doesn't really protest this exodus. The book hints maybe there's a bigger game being played between the states.
Huh. That adds a whole other dimension. Thinking about resource impacts of just people moving around and interstate politics maybe playing a role.
It challenges that idea that economic growth is always purely good, right?
Yeah,
You got to think about the resources needed to support it.
definitely. The carrying capacity of a region.
Okay, so all this is happening, and it brings us to part 3. And Bob Ackgill, again pronounced Ackgill,
Ockgill, right.
Chapter 5, Stone 1, The Call to Battle. It's August 2024, Bryan, Texas. Aguil wasn't planning to run for city council.
But he wasn't political.
Not initially, it seems. But he sees these warning signs, these trends, and feels he just has to do something. He feels this deep obligation.
Okay.
And the book says he has this moment, thinks the answer is 5 stones. Like David and Goliath.
Okay. A metaphor for tackling big problems.
Exactly. And those 5 stones become his campaign platform. It suggests change can start right there at the local level.
Grassroots awareness and action.
And these 5 stones, his campaign issues, are pretty concrete. You ready?
Lay 'em on me.
Okay. 1, kick Wall Street off of Home Street, basically. Stop speculative housing pressure.
Okay. Local economic.
2, $50 K reward for every missing person, found justice for the voiceless.
Public safety, social justice angle.
3, bulldoze the medians, remove bureaucratic hurdles, slowing down safety and growth projects.
Cutting red tape. Practical stuff.
4, water. Ensure long-term regional water security.
There it is. Front and center.
And 5, spaceport royalties for every Texan, share the wealth from future space commerce.
Interesting mix. Housing, safety, bureaucracy, water, and future tech wealth.
Yeah, it shows he's thinking broadly. But the book makes it clear that 4th stone, water security, that quickly becomes the absolute key issue.
Understandable. Given everything else the book is laying out about the water crisis, it's the foundation.
And the urgency ramps up fast. Chapter 6, Secrets in the Water. The fiction says back in May 2024, Bryan city leaders got some devastating news.
What was that?
Their water security forecast, it dropped from like a comfortable 50 years down to just 8 to 10 years.
Wow. That's catastrophic.
Huge drop. But here's the thing. They decided to keep it quiet. Didn't tell the public until after the elections.
Seriously. They kept that secret.
That's the story. And get this, even with this ticking clock, S&P Global gives Bryan an AA+ bond rating. Super stable, right?
Where it doesn't add up.
So Aguil, in the story, contacts them. And privately, an S&P rep supposedly admits they knew about the water problem.
They knew.
Yeah, but they were waiting to see if lawsuits might somehow undo previous water rights sales that were causing the problem.
So, prioritizing the bond rating and hoping for a legal fix over telling people the truth.
Seems like it in the fictional account. It paints this picture of prioritizing appearances over, well, reality and transparency.
That's a really worrying picture of institutional decision-making, or lack thereof. Reactive, not proactive.
Right. And then part 4, the voice from the grave. It gets personal. It shows the human cost.
How so?
There's this story of a local rancher. He gets offered big money for his water rights.
Okay, the water baron's moving in.
Exactly. But he's torn up about it. Tells the shopkeeper he's scared of selling out his community, but also scared of being left with nothing if he refuses.
A terrible position to be in.
And then he dies, mysteriously, shortly after.
Oh, wow.
Later, a Texas ranger finds a hidden letter from the rancher. He wrote about his guilt, his fear of betraying the future, and reveals his land-controlled access to 10% of a critical aquifer.
So his personal struggle was tied to a huge piece of the region's water security, and his death is suspicious.
It makes the whole water rights thing brutally real. Not just abstract contracts, but life and death and community survival.
Yeah, a very stark illustration.
So facing this, part 5, the great unraveling, Aguil proposes a solution. Bob Aguil.
Okay, what's his big idea?
It's ambitious. A massive pipeline, like 21 feet in diameter.
Wow. From where to where?
From the Gulf of Mexico all the way up to Dallas.
Yeah.
Plus desalination plants using Israeli tech.
Desalination. Okay, turning seawater into fresh water?
Right. The goal is clean water for Central Texas,
Right.
supposedly at low cost. But there's a big but.
What's the catch?
The timeline. 8 to 10 years to build it all.
Wait, 8 to 10 years. That's the same amount of time they supposedly have left before the aquifers run dry?
Exactly. It's a race against the clock. A really high-stakes gamble.
A massive engineering project versus a ticking environmental time bomb. That's tense.
And the book stresses just how high the stakes are economically. Central Texas generates, half the state's GDP?
A huge economic engine.
So if that region collapses because there's no water, the impact wouldn't just be Texas. It'd hit the whole nation, global competitiveness, everything.
Yeah, you can see the ripple effects.
Yet the fiction shows state leaders just maintaining this optimistic front. Smiling for cameras, downplaying the danger.
Yeah, that disconnect between the reality on the ground and the official message. It's a recurring theme, it seems.
Totally. Then, part 6, the space monopoly and the final stone. We're back to Minsk.
The tech guy.
By 2024, in the story, he's launched 7,000 satellites. 7,000. Basically got a near monopoly on low Earth orbit internet.
Okay, dominating satellite internet.
But then the book raises this really disturbing question. It mentions undersea communication cables being cut and asks, are these just accidents?
Mm.
Or is it deliberate? A move to make the world dependent on Minsk's satellite network, creating a communications chokehold.
Control the information flow globally. Wow, that's another kind of siege entirely.
Yeah, first water, now information.
Yeah.
It broadens the scope of the threat.
From physical resources to digital infrastructure, multifaceted vulnerability.
And this worry about monopolies leads Akil back to space, his fifth stone, remember.
Spaceport royalties for every Texan.
Right. He pushes for a Texas spaceport trust. His argument is the profits from space launches. They should benefit all Texans, not just, a few powerful companies or individuals creating monopolies.
So he's drawing a direct line.
Exactly. He connects the danger of water monopolies sucking the state dry
to the potential danger of space monopolies doing the same thing with future wealth.
It ties his platform together, protecting both present resources and future opportunities from unchecked corporate power.
That's a really insightful connection he makes in the narrative. It's comprehensive.
So, Part 7, the David Race, May 2025. Akil runs his campaign, but it's different.
How so? No ads?
No traditional ads. He goes door to door, talks to people directly, face to face.
Old school grassroots.
Totally. And even though he's up against the establishment, he gets 20% of the vote. Nearly 1,000 votes.
That's actually pretty significant for that kind of campaign.
Right. And he says in an interview afterwards, his goal wasn't to win an office. It was to give a warning.
He saw his role as sounding the alarm.
Yeah. He believed in the power of just telling the truth, hoping it would wake people up.
It highlights that idea that even without winning, you can still have an impact by raising awareness, changing the conversation.
Which leads to the epilogue, silent victory.
Yeah.
Kind of bittersweet, ambiguous.
How does it end?
Well, it shows the reality.
Yeah.
Dry fields, low rivers. The water crisis is still very much there.
So not a simple happy ending.
Not at all. But it says the people are starting to wake up. There's this sense of growing awareness.
Okay, so there's a shift happening.
Yeah. And Akil writes in his journal, referencing the book of Joel in the Bible, about needing to fast and cry out for help in a crisis. His thought is, sometimes it takes a crisis for people to pay attention. But even then, you still have the choice to ask for help, to act.
The crisis forces a reckoning, but also offers a chance to respond.
And the very last lines are powerful. Remember the Alamo, but also remember Bryan.
Wow. Suggesting Bryan is a new kind of battleground for Texas's future.
I think so. Not muskets and cannons, but water rights, resource management, public awareness. A different kind of fight for survival.
A modern struggle for sovereignty, defined by resources.
So wrapping up our deep dive here, Silent Siege lays out this really layered threat. You've got the foreign plot hitting water resources.
Right, the unintended side effects of tech policies like the GGPS Act.
The rise of these powerful monopolies controlling water, maybe communications, maybe space.
And this sort of institutional reluctance or maybe slowness to really face the crisis head on.
And in the middle, you have Bob Akil, and his initial response, those 5 stones we talked about.
Yeah. 1, kick Wall Street off Home Street.
Yeah.
2, the $50 K reward for missing persons. 3, bulldoze the medians. 4, water, water, water. And 5, spaceport royalties for every Texan.
His attempt to fight back on multiple fronts against these connected problems, as the fiction presents it.
A kind of holistic response to a complex siege.
Which leaves us, and you listening, with a final thought. This fictional story weaves together resources, technology, government, all these threads. It makes you wonder, doesn't it?
What other silent sieges might be happening, maybe in your own community or, on a bigger scale?
What vulnerabilities are hiding in systems we think are totally solid? It's definitely food for thought.
Yeah. A reminder to stay critical, stay aware, even when threats aren't obvious.
Absolutely. This dive into Silent Siege really just scratches the surface, but hopefully gives you a framework to think about these kinds of interconnected issues long after this.